Interesting. The lineup that Maresca actually selected for this game was not what Chelsea fans expected, and Maresca said that he was experimenting in a new tactics. Now Chelsea have always lined up in a 4-2-3-1 structure, but this time Maresca decided to start Gusto in the right back position, and Gusto, who has been out of form, who has not been very great attacking wise and defensively. Rhys James in that midfield position where he had players like Lavia and Andre Santos in Chelsea's bench. Rhys James, who's also not quite comfortable playing the inverted fullback role and is not quite aware of playing that defensive midfield position. Another error that Maresca made with his lineup is the deployment of Palma as a right winger, and a right winger, a position that Palma does not play because Palma is an attacking midfielder who wants to have that space in between the lines, roam around, receive the ball, and look to create. And the other was starting Pedro Neto as a left winger, making Neto to have his outer foot down the left and actually limiting Neto's threat in the team. But Flamengo's 3-1 victory over Chelsea is a case of a team beating Chelsea at its own game. And credit needs to go to Flamengo to how they managed to deal with Chelsea from the onset. And this defeat did not just come as a simple defeat, but rather mounting banter and humiliation from the Flamengo fans towards the Chelsea fan. A game that Flamengo had really bayed about throughout the season, how they were going to face Chelsea in the group stages. But how did Flamengo do it? What did Flamengo do to actually turn around the game and get all the 3 points, as well as getting a resounding victory over one of the best teams in English football? What is this that they actually did? And in our video today, we do an in-depth tactical analysis of Flamengo 3, Chelsea 1, understanding the tactics that both managers used and the strengths that both managers displayed. If you are new to this channel, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this. Let's proceed. Now, from the 60th minute, Flamengo just changed the game with a nice equalizer, then following it up 4 minutes later, going 2-1 ahead. And then, coupled by Jackson's red card, the game was taken away from Chelsea in a split second. So how did that happen? Maresca experimented Chelsea with a new system, and he also talked about it, which is he tried to use fullbacks who generate the width, but using Palma and Enzo Fernandez as inside forwards while using a front two of Neto and Dilap. Maresca's system heavily relied upon width generated by the fullbacks rather than the wingers. And if he's playing in this system, it would have been a bit better if Lavia would play in midfield instead of Rhys James, and if Rhys James played in that wide area instead of Gusto. Chelsea heavily relied upon building through the right, and through the right was where Palmeiras was very strong because they managed to close down Gusto whenever Gusto receives the ball. And since Gusto was not comfortable with the ball in this, receiving the ball to his feet in these zones, the fullback would pounce on him and force Gusto to play it back or actually lose possession if he attempted to play the ball in field. And that is what happened when he attempted to play the ball to Moises Caicedo in that situation. Gusto attempts to play this ball, but Jorginho is able to read the game quite well. Jorginho, who was covering Cole Palma, can spot that the ball is about to be played to Caicedo. And Jorginho moves, wins the ball ahead of Caicedo. And another way is that Maresca instructed Sanchez to be trying to go over the top, especially towards the wide areas to try and get the fullbacks. But here again, we saw where Chelsea were getting problems because now the ball was being lost in these zones and Chelsea were found in very difficult situations. Maresca's idea was to try and find the ball onto the fullbacks and then have Dilap and Neto make diagonal runs, spreading the opposition's centre-backs away from each other. That was Maresca's plan. But what went wrong with this plan? Because we saw that throughout the game, especially in the first half, Chelsea were being dominated by Flamengo, and this system seemed not to have worked, though Maresca anticipated this altercation would have given Chelsea the advantage. One problem is that Chelsea were heavily relying upon width from the wingers, and in this case, the wingers were deeper. So when the wingers were deeper, they were not pinning the fullbacks deeper. And because they were starting wide, the opposition would just commit their wingers onto them. And then moving into that back front two structure with Dilap and Neto playing in those half space positions, and Palma and Fernandez playing slightly deeper and in slightly wider positions in those inside channel positions, created problems for Chelsea, in that Chelsea lacked natural width high up the pitch. And also, having this kind of system made it so easy for Flamengo to actually outnumber Chelsea, by Flamengo using their 4-4 to try and press Chelsea, having players like Jorginho catch tight on players like Cole Palmer, and having Gusto in this wide area who's not so good when it comes to actually dominating the ball. And this made Caicedo to even start dropping deeper to try and even things out for Chelsea. Reece James remaining much deeper in pitch, ready to receive the ball and play the ball to Fernandes, while Cucurella was being tasked to play more of a conventional fullback. Now in this system heavily relies upon crosses from the wide area, and if you have fullbacks who are not so good in those wide area crossing, then you do have a problem in those kinds of situations, as Chelsea faced it down the right. Because Gusto was not so quite strong attacking wise in this system, Flamengo would allow Gusto to receive the ball because they knew that Gusto was quite limited in this role. So Gusto would either try to play the ball to Palma, which would be lost, or play the ball back to Jackson. And when Flamengo will receive the ball, they will now have a 5v3, a 4v3 in attack, as they were now looking to make those counter-attacking runs against Chelsea. That's how Chelsea conceded the first goal. And Maresca seemed to have not realized that his new innovative tactic, was not suited for this game, but rather for a preseason game. Maresca's system wanted to have 4 players ahead with a man-oriented man-marking system far high up the pitch. Maresca wanted to use his midfielders, especially his deep midfielders, to progress with the ball forward and have his forwards making those diagonal runs. And here is where the problem came. You see, when you don't have a player like Lavia in that midfield who's able to dictate the game, then you do have some problem. Because even if now the ball, Maresca wanted Fernandes to receive this ball in this inside channel and look to play the ball for the runs of Dilap and Neto. And in the first half, it really looked dangerous when Chelsea got the ball because they were able to isolate these centre-backs 1v1. But once Flamengo understood how to stop Chelsea, and this is committing their 2 forwards on the 2 centre-backs, and then also committing their fullbacks on Chelsea's fullbacks, it became so problematic. And then Maresca trying to use Cole Palmer to hold on to the ball, and Palmer receiving the ball in a wide area where he's not quite great, unlike having Palmer receive that ball in between the lines. Also, the use of fullbacks and not wingers in those wide areas made Flamengo's fullbacks quite comfortable when it comes to the attacking zones of the pitch. The 2-2-4-2 system did not work as Maresca had entailed. This is because of Flamengo's rigid 4-4 structure, with their forwards looking to sit on Chelsea's 2 pivots and their wide players looking to position themselves diagonally to press Chelsea's fullbacks and centre-backs. Gusto in particular, whenever he received the ball with acres of space, was not able to make a perfectly weighted pass ahead for his wide players. And even if he did, you now found players like Neto and Palma receiving the ball in those wide areas, looking to try and have cutbacks in these kinds of zones. Now, without the ball, Chelsea were looking to try and press with their usual 4-4 structure. And this was problematic because now Flamengo used the same tactic against Chelsea. And what was that? Flamengo were trying to use their goalkeeper as the deeper player during build-up, and they actually had natural midfielders at the base. Their goalkeeper was so clear. Play the ball onto the fullback, and because Flamengo also had wingers and fullbacks, they always had a man advantage in the wide area over Chelsea. Their main aim even sometimes was to play the ball over the top and try to isolate Chelsea's centre-backs 1v1. And in this situation, you find it. Chelsea are actually having two centre backs defending two forwards, which is a very, very bad situation as a manager. You must always have a +1 in defense when you're looking to press. Chelsea were also quite slow in their press because they heavily relied upon Fernandes and Palmer to cover the wide areas, who are natural midfielders in those particular positions. And once the fullbacks had the ball, Chelsea's midfield was left open. Flamengo could receive the ball in between the lines and immediately have acres of space to play the balls in behind, as they had sucked in Chelsea's centre-backs out of position. When Chelsea also had the ball, Flamengo's forwards were so aggressive into pressing the centre-backs. And because Chelsea also did not have an extra player during build-up in this situation, the centre-backs were constantly under pressure and they were bound to make sloppy passes in between the lines. And once they lost this ball in between the lines, immediately Flamengo received the ball and immediately looked to counter. You see, when you have your two centre-backs up against two forwards, they are constantly receiving the ball under pressure compared to when you have a +1, that is, you have a back three. Flamengo, on the other hand, were quite rigid with their system, the 2-3-5 system, with Jorginho playing as the deeper number 6. And because Chelsea were just defending again in an awkward position that they don't defend with, which is a 4-1-4-1, with now James pushing forward alongside Fernandes, with Palmer and Neto playing wide. The 4-1-4-1 structure was constantly giving Palmeiras the ability to drop players in between the lines. And once they received the ball, Chelsea were finding themselves in very difficult situations when it came to defending. In particular, down the left, they were trying to create this overload to drag the Chelsea's defense towards the left. And immediately they did this, they always look to isolate Malo Gusto in a 2v1 situation, knowing that if they're able to play the ball towards that side, they will automatically have an advantage over Chelsea. Now, Flamengo was so robust in their gameplay. They stuck to their patterns. They stuck to what they knew best. They did not make any altercation, and Chelsea decided to actually tie an anchor on their fate that saw Chelsea capitulate. The Club World Cup, Chelsea now have to get a draw against Estunis, since Estunis managed to win over LAFC. But again, Chelsea should have actually gone for a win in this game, and Maresca, this was the game where Maresca should not have experimented with a new system. He acknowledged that. Jackson, on the other hand, costed the team again, will be out if probably Chelsea get to the semi-finals, meaning that his overall contribution in the Club World Cup will be non-existent, something that he did also last season. What do you think? Do you agree with me in this analysis? Leave your comments in the comment section below. Thanks for watching and see you in our next video.